Namaste and welcome to the Happy Jack Yoga Podcast. I'm Happy Jack, live from Bracebridge, Muskoka, Ontario, Canada. And I'm here with
Happy Hannah and Happy Coco, who is snorting around our recording studio today.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's cool. We get to be here together in person. We did the very first episode in person from Boston. That was the day my parents' house burnt down 2.5 years ago, or 2 years ago. Have we done another episode
Like in the same
in the same
screen?
room?
I don't
Maybe
think so.
one. I don't know. I don't remember it. This seems different. Normally, I'm used to seeing Hun on the screen, but I'm next here. But we're super excited. For those who are listening on Spotify and Apple, you got no idea what we're talking about. But Hun and I are in the same room, and we're super inspired to be here. And actually, we're just getting off a yoga for grief course that Hun has been leading this week. And so we've got beautiful souls in the room here with us. Shout out to Carol, Evelina, Hannah, Cece,
Angie.
Angie, okay, yeah, Jim, Karen, Kelly, Rita, Sue, and Tanya, and I'm sure others as well. But why don't you share with us, Anna? This we've had a chance to chat before you took over in this course. You've led this course before, you created it before. You've since been, working on your master's in psychotherapy and doing all kinds of grief training. You've lived grief earlier in life, and now you've been studying it and immersing yourself in it. Give us a taste. What's been happening the past couple of days?
We are exploring grief, I would say, from a different perspective every time because our understanding of grief expands as we expand.
Mm.
And I think maybe one of the most important takeaways from like thinking about grief is that grief isn't just related to losing a loved one, but it can be um, related to anything. It could be just a layer of nostalgia. It could be that we're grieving a loss of innocence or a stage in our life. Someone might, be navigating life transitions, and every time life changes there can be things to process, and we kind of collectively call it grief, but I'm not sure that grief is always the right word for that. It seems like, and that's why we also talk a lot about trauma and actually what makes an event traumatic.
Mm.
And yeah, it's kind of like having some really important conversations with people who are willing to explore
Mm.
difficult topics, but really I find also very nourishing. It's very inspiring and yeah, beautiful.
That's so nice. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of like I feel like the term trauma is becoming, maybe normalized is not the right word, but it's becoming something. It's not like, oh, some big traumatic experience happened, but actually trauma is something that we've all experienced and we all continue to. And it sounds like grief is similar.
Mm.
I had a mini experience. This is not, I don't know. You tell me if this is grief or not, but it may be fear of missing out. But this morning, so many of my friends who are at the Harvard Divinity School, they're getting ready to go back to school in the semester. So they're moving back to Boston, and I mean, the biggest part of me is so relieved not to have that, workload commitment coming up. But there's a part of me that's like, thinking about my buddy Craig and thinking about, just certain people, and it's like that was a really nice experience. So maybe, I
Mm.
guess maybe that's not grief, but there's that separation which we talk about in yoga, or attachment to things, or separation, and it seems like they're different levels, different elements of the same experience, perhaps.
Yeah, it's like an era of your life is over and you're noticing it, and you have some feelings about it. And I do think that grief is one of the central human experiences. There's nobody who can escape that. Just
Mm.
like age, everybody is aging. So it's kind of absurd that there's such a thing as ageism because all of us are in the same boat, yet we have preferences over numbers that people have. In the same way, grief is is something that is going to touch all of us
Mm.
in one way or another, and many times in each lifetime. It's not just some unlucky ones who lose someone, but we all have these transitions happening um, all the time, many
Yeah.
times.
And it's a gift, like we've
Mm.
talked about before. I think about, you say aging is real. So, those who know me well know that I don't have social media on my phone anymore, and for me it's such a blessing. But what the phone, these smartphones are super smart, and what they still do, every time I open it, it suggests like photos from the past. And it's, lots of photos from us back in the day, in Finland. And seeing 10 years ago to today, we don't see it daily, but if you look at a photo of yourself from 10 years ago, it's like, okay, yeah, I've aged. um, and then also I was thinking about this weekend. Hanna, you're from Finland, my mom is from Finland. Every Labor Day weekend, my mom's family gets together at my Aunt Lena's house. And I was just thinking, like, my Uncle Kenny, I haven't seen in, like, gosh, it's probably close to, I don't know, maybe it's 5 or 10 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. And I was just like thinking about seeing him, and I know that his health is not as good as it was. He was a professional hockey player in the NHL, and now he's quite old. He's 80-ish, and his health is not great. And so I could imagine him saying something like, "Oh, I'm not what I used to be." And but truthfully, I feel like because of you and what you've shared, Hanna, anytime I hear people talk about aging, I see it as such a gift. And now I'm seeing that with my parents. It's like we could be like, oh, it's too bad that they're not as mobile. It's too bad that they're fragile. But again, if we think about those that we lost, that many who went too young, it's a gift to be able to get fragile and old and delicate. And but it's easier said than done. And I'm sure grief, when I lose a parent, it's a different experience that I will need to go through. But at least on the day to day, there's something inspiring about that process.
Yeah, it's like there's more to love.
Yeah.
Their humanity comes forth even more. Our humanity, when you see your own hair getting gray, or the new wrinkles that the face develops, I find that it's a sign that there's more to love. There's more
Mm.
content, there's more depth, there's more nuance, there's more life. And it's so human to have all of these experiences.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to be without it, just like I wouldn't want to be without grief. Like, it sounds like, oh, it's such a loaded word, but it is also a testimony to a lot of love and appreciation and
Mhm.
depth and expansion.
Yeah. And so I guess bringing it back to, this is a yoga community. This is a yoga podcast. This course that you're facilitating is yoga for grief. How it just kind of bringing it back to those of us, many who are live here. How is this relevant for us as yoga teachers? Why? How does yoga fit into the picture? How do the two go together? Like, yes, this is something you've lived and you've studied and you've brought the two together. And say for your average yogi who maybe hasn't had a traumatic or a deeply grieving experience yet,
Mm.
or have, how do the two come together?
Well, yoga is about seeking union, and I think it's about seeking some it's like a vibrational practice where we create the conditions for something to arise.
Mm.
So the connection arises to either God or yourself or your soul or some insight or the present moment. And as yogis, we have that experience over and over in our meditation, in our breathing practice, in our yogasana. And the reason why yoga works is that we're animals with a nervous system. And
Mm.
when we breathe in certain ways, when we put ourselves in yoga poses, our nervous system has a response, and our brain is part of our nervous system. So,
Mm.
how the brain works, what it does, what it focuses on, how it interprets the world is dependent on what type of energy it is in, how it is functioning, if it's overwhelmed or if it's more peaceful, if it's more even, grounded. So yoga helps in the process of navigating life because it gives us depth and opportunities for things to arise within us. And in this day of social media and podcasts, we often get ideas from outside of ourselves. But yoga and therapy, for that matter, are tools where we can have insights from the inside. And
Mm,
those are the most powerful ones for us because those are the ones that actually dictate what we choose, how we live, how we
mm.
show up for ourselves or others. So that's how yoga is relevant in terms of grief or trauma or anything. And for yoga teachers, the reason we do a yoga for grief training is that yoga teachers will meet different types of populations when they teach their classes. And we just finished saying that grief is a fundamental, central, existential human experience, that there's no human who can escape grief. So we find it relevant that we kind of work against grief illiteracy, meaning we find and define what grief is. We understand more and more how it works and how it might show up in our lives and how we can better meet it versus ignore it or avoid it because it's so common. So that's why we have a yoga for grief training so that our students can then turn around and apply it in their own lives first, because we are all our own tool first. You're your first tool. So you want to see how that impacts yourself. And then from what you learned inside of you, then you can share with your people or with your students.
Yeah, I like the idea. I like the idea how both the grief and the therapeutic work and the yogic work means like kind of turning within and going within for the answer. And I know that's something that interests me, that attracts me, because I'm notoriously the one who's like seeking externally for the answer.
Mm.
Kind of tell me, what do you think? Asking others, seeking, sometimes seeking validation, but more so, seeking the, just tell me the right thing to do and I'll do it.
Mm.
That's kind of how I'm wired. Like, tell me what's best. The best way to eat, I'll eat that way. The best way to work out, I'll work out that way. Best way to do yoga, best way to live, best place to, and I mean, it's okay to be inspired by others and to model others that we're inspired by. But that is a nice thing that the yoga brings, is this ability to look within. And at a time when we're asking big questions and making big decisions, I've noticed that people, as with best intentions, they have their own filter, their own life experience is coloring their sharing with me. And so it's two people that I deeply trust can have completely opposite answers.
Yeah, and this is why you bring in those perspectives because they're important too. But
Yeah.
then you alone in your heart will know how that applies to you and how you're going to put that into action in your life. It's a
Yeah.
process of integrating what they say, taking good advice from people you trust, and then you put all of that inside of your heart, inside your soul, and you do your own kind of, you make sense out of all of that in your own way, right?
Yeah, just practically, what is the best way to do it? And I know, like I see you've got a journal there. Journaling, my therapist says journaling. We've all known journaling. It's just somehow it's just not taken off for me. In fact, I was Googling the other day, is there like an app out there where I can just talk? Because
Mm.
I can sit here and talk with all of you for 60 minutes, and I love this. This is my way to express. This is my way to get it out. And somebody said at the seminar last week in Florida, that I'm a talker, not a typer. And I was like, yeah, that's me. And so I guess my question is, I guess we can have that experience through a therapy session or a coaching session or a deep, meaningful friendship conversation. Do you think, I don't know if you've experienced it or if you have you heard anything about it, can we find an app or can we find something where we can just like talk? So whatever we would want to say, if there, even if there is value in pen to paper, I believe there is, but if there's an inherent resistance that that never happens, do you think there can be value of just verbally expressing yourself regularly and get the same outcome?
Absolutely. The reason I write things down is because I want to remember them. I have
Mm.
insights that I don't, or someone says something really fascinating. So it's kind of like my working sheet. Like these are the topics that I process inside of my heart, or all of the post-it notes around here. These are kind of reminders for me to that I don't want to forget those topics. But going back to earlier where you said that you want to find the best way to do things, and you want to find the right nutrition or the right approach to things. And I think one of the reasons why that can be difficult for you is that there's many right ways. There isn't just
Mm.
one.
Yeah.
And that's why there's many religions and many cultures and many um, realities that people inhabit. And and that's why I think the inner landscape is going to be helpful to cultivate so that you can find your own way to apply the wisdom that you receive from outside and the inner wisdom that already is inside of you. It might be and I do know, and I know this from you, that you do have also a strong inner voice. Like you bring in all the perspectives and you think about them, you digest them, you look at them, you're in inquiry.
Mm.
And though when you make your decision, it is your decision. And then you're grounded and confident in it.
Mm.
It's just that you are very kind of coachable. Like you're every coach's dream because you will implement and you will change things. You are very active like that. And though it the tricky part for all of us, not just you, is that there isn't just one right way. And how
Mm.
we navigate that, we have different responses because of our personality and our way of how we've been conditioned can be different.
Yeah. And I suppose at different stages of life, it's a right answer for the same person. The solution can be different at different
Mm,
stages of life.
yeah.
I just again, I'm loving back being back here in Muskoka, spending time with my parents, and just being able to help, and you know like even the littlest thing, because my dad just had the hip replacement surgery, so he can't even put on and tie up his own shoes. I love, I love being able to help with those little things. He tied my shoes when I was a kid. How many times he's put on my hockey skates when I was a kid. And it's like it's this whole circle of life, and obviously hopefully he's better and can do it on his own again soon. But it's just these little things are so meaningful, where in the decade before and the decade before that, I would not have had any interest in doing those kind of things with my grandma or something, right? I just wanted to have fun, or I wanted to do whatever, obsess about my things. So it's like, yeah, I like that idea that there's many right answers, and it depends kind of where we're at, what stage we're at.
Yeah. And what really sounds like the right path for each of us at any given time. And that's why life is a navigation. It's an ongoing moment to moment lived experience. And I might want to just take the question Sue put in the chat. She says, "Would you consider grief the same or similar to suffering?" And I love this question because oftentimes we might think instinctively that grief is the same as suffering. And you might want to watch my lecture from yesterday, Sue. I discussed this very topic in it at length, where grief comes from a Latin word gravare, which means heavy, burdensome.
Mm.
And and so in the word itself might mean something heavy, burdensome to carry, but I think that we came to the conclusion. So I wrote my dissertation for my master's on grief. So I've done lots of research on grief and different grief theory. And one of the first things that I say in my dissertation is that grief is considered a burdensome suffering, but as we discover, suffering is, you know, is not the same as grief in that if we want to integrate grief, we need to see that suffering alone is not enough because then everybody would be grief, compatible or would understand grief. Or if suffering was equal to wisdom, it's also not the case. In addition to suffering, we need compassion, we need love, we need mourning, we need processing. Suffering, in addition to like if we want to integrate grief, suffering alone is not enough. We need other skills too. We need to somehow process and integrate and explore and practice. It sounds funny, but we need to kind of like have a space where we can be really honest and human about the things we're experiencing.
That's what I was thinking when I saw Sue's question. And I think you just explained it as well. And I'm not the expert, but it occurs to me that grief is like a process
Mm.
versus suffering is like a state. It's
It's
kind of like
part of the process.
it's kind of yeah one, and it's like yeah, I mean yeah we can process suffering, but to me it seems like kind of suffering is when you're in a state, and
Mhm.
ideally we don't stay in that state. But grief is like a journey that we
Mhm.
go through, and it probably goes through. I think there is different steps of
Mm.
denial and anger and these different things. um,
Yeah, or you could think about grief. There's one of the scientists. So all of the things I'm saying, they come from people who've said it prior to me. So I did not come up with any of this. But one brain scientist, actually, O'Connor, says that she defines grief in two ways. One is the wave of grief, which could be the suffering, overwhelming sense of, when you think about when your tears come, when you think about or something has happened and you think about it, it's like a wave that comes over you and it can come unexpectedly and repeatedly at any time.
you look at me when you say that because I'm
Because
I'm the crier.
yeah, and I can cry too. I've cried lots too because of
Yeah.
grief. So it's not, I'm not putting it on you, but that feeling of wave of grief. And then the other one is what you just said. Grief is the process of
Mm.
implementing and practicing and seeing it as a long-term thing that we kind of have to sometimes make space for and take the teachings from it. So it's both the moment of grief and there's a process or an
Mm.
ongoing kind of practice, if you like, a conversation maybe that you have with grief.
And in that sense, I see how it fits very nicely with yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, again, sacred time in the morning. I love waking up hours before my parents are awake and getting on my yoga mat and doing a flow, and just every day is different. The sequence can be very similar every day, but the experience and the
Mm.
emotions are different based on what burden I feel of
Mm-hmm.
responsibility or what lightness and gratitude I'm feeling.
Mm.
And so I see the getting on our yoga mat and doing the practices and doing the chanting and doing the breath work as tools to facilitate, hold space, right? They don't fix it, they don't erase it, but they just kind of like hold space versus, well, there's other things we can do that are not as helpful, TV, food, this kind of thing. um yeah, so I just see how yoga can be just such a beautiful complement. And so, I mean, we could just keep going into this grief, which is awesome. But like for your average yoga teacher, how might we use it? So let's say we spend a week with you, Hanna, right? We do a deep dive. We understand. We get to look at ourselves. We get to hear other stories, inspiring reflections from others. We learn the systems and the tools and the practices. Now we've got this 25-hour certification, and we're already a certified yoga teacher. We're teaching some yoga classes. Is this, of course, there's different ways to do it, but is it, I guess sometimes it will be useful in a one-on-one conversation where you're supporting someone. Is it also, could it also be brought into a public yoga class?
Definitely. I'm thinking of this training more as kind of an educational thing, like to know what
Mm,
grief is and how it works and how it can be integrated, how yoga philosophy um, would define grief. And I think of it as like my ideal would be that a person who takes this training, A, they know what grief is, so they will not be shying away from it when they meet someone who is dealing with any type of grief, because that is isolating for others if we don't have the, let's say, the balls to see someone in the eyes when they are
mm,
grieving. And since it's such a core human experience, I think it's kind of like our responsibility to be there for each other, especially in these times. And the other is that I hope that they learn how to name their own experience, and they can learn to hold space for someone else who is naming their experience. In that, that means mm, understanding a little bit of the functions and how we can attune to ourselves, just learn how to be with the challenges that life presents us.
yeah. And how, I'm just thinking about like when you talk about that, being able to hold space for others and have that compassion and yeah, just being able to be present. We can all think of, at least I can think of some people in my life that are awesome to be around and super high vibe. Happy Hannah is one of them, right? People like here on the podcast with us. And then there's some people that, can be draining or just not, it's just kind of hard to be around. And so is there like their distinction? Because if someone is truly grieving and going through something, and it's like we always want to have compassion. Some people are just wired a certain way to kind of be complaining or just kind of always in that space. So I guess I'm wondering, because when you say about being able to stay present, be
Mm-hmm,
present with people, do you think, maybe this is a little bit off topic,
mm-hmm.
but do you think that we should let ourselves just always be present with and hold space with people, or is it okay to choose how much time we spend with certain people? And of course it depends if it's a professional relationship. If you're working as a therapist, then you're like fully committed and you're there. I guess
Mm.
I'm trying to, I guess it's different if somebody's grieving versus someone is just kind of like, a victim or whining.
Yeah, I think that um, this we discuss this a lot too in our trainings. At least I do with my people. And today this was raised as well. Like our urge to fix each other is
Mm,
very strong. And I wonder if part of that urge is because we do not want to hold, like we find it overwhelming. It might be overwhelming for your system to be in the presence of someone who is, processing something very distinctively. And
mm,
so we need to have compassion for ourselves and kind of self knowledge that um, I noticed that I might not be the best person to be around in, I don't know, in a grief setting or a trauma setting, or we might wonder that about ourselves. So what I think that is powerful in this type of context is to learn how to not take other people's process as one's own. And so that doesn't mean that we put up boundaries and are not available, but it's when you are present to someone else that you learn to almost like there's a third witness. You're
mm,
listening what the person is saying and you're kind of analyzing it. Oh, they're reporting that they are tired and that they are sick of this and that, and there is a sense of like what I'm hearing underneath their words is a feeling of, let's say, overwhelm or frustration. So if I
mm,
can name that, if I can point that out, it's less likely to drain me. I understand that they are having this experience. And when I understand that, I can hold it differently. I know that it's not my overwhelm and I don't need to fix it. I don't need to go into it. So it makes it more sustainable, this conversation then, because I know
Mhm.
that they are not, and it's easier then to have compassion,
Mhm.
right? And it's easier to not try to fix it because then we can see, oh, it's understandable that they might be frustrated and tired. And all we need to do is to acknowledge it. When the recognition meets, when both of us have this, let's call it relational mindfulness, then it's almost like some energy gets released. Like the tension that was there, oftentimes it'll kind of take a little bit of a break. And the person might then decide to, it could help them get over it, or they could decide to make changes, or it's impossible to predict that what they might do. But this is kind of the purpose of naming things, being able to be present to them. But it's really important that we know that I don't need to take it on as my own. And it doesn't mean that I have to put up boundaries and I'm not available. But these are things, this is like an energetic dance that we need to learn how to do
Mhm.
and to know how we can make it sustainable for ourselves. Is then, interestingly enough, means that if I can hold that space for myself first. So when I'm frustrated or tired or sad or anxious, that I can name it without making it wrong. Noticing, oh, I'm noticing in my belly that I'm anxious,
Mhm.
or I find it hard to concentrate today. I notice that about
Mhm.
myself. I can hold that. It doesn't mean that this day is bad or that my vibes are bad. It means,
Mhm.
fascinating. I might be anxious or tired. And then
Yeah.
we don't buy into it. We don't, it's not what drives me then. It's like there's a bit of a space.
Yeah, it sounds like it allows you to respond versus react.
Yeah.
Because the typical is like fight or flight. And
Mhm.
so I don't like to fight because I like harmony. So I flight, just kind of leave.
Yeah.
And I've talked to other teachers, some, and again, here's where different teachers will have different perspectives. So, for example, Tony Robbins would talk about association and proximity, and the Bhakti yogis as well, right? The five people you spend the most time with is who you become. So it's very important to be mindful who we physically spend time with. And we've got a teacher in India, right, in Rishikesh, who is who believes genuinely that bliss is our true nature, and he's so positive and so high vibe, and so he doesn't avoid negative situations or negative people. He just brings the positivity regardless of what the circumstances. And again, both of those can be right, but I suppose without the training, without even just the language or the framework or understanding that, the typical default is the fight or flight. At least that's my experience. And but I think, as you say, we have to honor our nature. Like I have, it's kind of like if we watch a movie, that we watch that, what was that series, New Amsterdam. We
Mhm.
watched this series during the pandemic, New Amsterdam, and it was an awesome show. But like periodically, they were in a hospital and they were doing like surgery, and there was blood and stuff. And both of us are like, just can't watch it, can't look. And there's certain things I'm also kind of get queasy about. I could not be a paramedic. So much respect for all of those out there that do that service. um, and probably some of us are more wired, more attuned to do therapeutic work, and to and others may, I think what I love to do is, yeah, be in community and be in conversation, but kind of being real, but kind of from real authenticity moving to the empowerment, not so much about diving deeper into the you know and I think you're good at that. So it's kind of knowing what our nature is.
Yeah, I think it's also a conversation around like what feels fulfilling. Like
Yeah.
we were talking about just before hitting record, is if if we were able to organize our daily life and our interactions in ways that it leaves us empowered, that it leaves us fulfilled, that it, fills our cup, then that would be the right relationship to be in with regards to those activities. Because if it's constantly draining, then we'll deplete our energies, and then we have burnout and chronic fatigue and depression. So the way is to also to get to know ourselves and learn tools as well. So all this therapeutic work, these are tools that people go and get trained for, and that's how it's possible. But of course there's the personal interest. What, like, you love being in conversation like this and it fulfills you. I feel that about therapeutic work. I feel so grateful. I feel so expanded, and I feel like it's a gift. I could do it all day, every day, because it is deeply fulfilling to me.
That's how I feel about satsang.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do often too. So
Yeah.
I guess it needs to be reciprocal in terms of like that we do a service, but then it must feel deeply meaningful so that it fulfills us. And I'm sure the paramedics who do that work have this type of kind of reward system built into it, hopefully, so that they don't get depleted.
Yeah.
Or whichever profession we're involved in.
So do you think, is it ideal to always, or as much as possible, put ourselves in environments that are nourishing? Like, in one sense it's like, yeah, obviously, but is that possible? Like, for me, leading community sharing circles, satsangs, is very nourishing. And I guess, yeah, I guess I notice I gravitate toward doing the things that I love to do, and I have other responsibilities that kind of like eventually happen, but there's like a procrastination where it's not as nourishing. It's just like a necessity, emails, whatever the case happens to be.
I think, yeah, the balance of that, of course, is really important. And as yoga teachers, many of you here are yoga teachers, you know how uplifting and fulfilling it is to teach. If you lead a good yoga class and everyone is attuned, there's something energetically that happens. It's a secret, but yoga teachers get the highest and the best kicks from the yoga classes. Like all the yogis who've had a great practice in Shavasana, they go like, oh, this is the best thing in my world is to go to yoga. And oftentimes the teachers, as long as they're not depleted, they will get an incredible boost from teaching. That is something that we don't talk a lot about. Just like we're getting it from our community calls and being together. It's a different kind of boost, but we all love it. That's why we keep showing up again and again. But it is true, we also have to do things that are not so fulfilling. And so we need to balance how to get all of the, like in this, I could compare it to my house. Like there's so many areas of this house that I feel like I should take care of, should wash the windows, should dust all the dust from this, that, and the other shelf, and all the cupboards, or the where the things are inside. What is that called? Like a closet. They would need to be organized, and so forth. And I can live with the balance that they not all are in perfect order, but some of the things I will need to also keep doing and find ways to make it such that either ask for help or put on a podcast and get going at it. So I think it's a balance. And then there is a feeling, notice how also the things we need to do that are not so fulfilling, when we get them done, there is this feeling of like a dopamine hit, like, yes, done, amazing. Like there's satisfaction in, and that's what they call it, like the dopamine nation. Like we would want the quick dopamines from all of the coping mechanisms that we've identified that are not so good. Like food, for example, is a quick way to kind of reward our system, and it feels like ka-ching, a kick from dopamine. But then also there's this other way of like working towards, like a workout will also be an incredible, great dopamine hit, or doing a yoga class, or doing some of those tasks that are on our to-do list when we've worked hard for it. There's another kind of satisfaction that comes from completing a task that we actually didn't really want to do
Mm.
or we avoided doing for a long time. And when we're getting it done, then we're like, wow, that was great. So
Yeah.
there's many ways to find fulfillment, and we might need to use both strategies.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I was thinking about we have to do we have whatever we do, we have to do it authentically. We have to be ourselves and we have to find the right balance and the right way to engage. What I when I think what I mean by when I think of that, like leading retreats. Like we love doing retreats. Our next retreat coming up is India. I see we got Evelina, Angie, Cece, and others who are going to be with us soon in Mother India. And can't wait for that. In fact, actually, just a little side, you went to a yoga class last weekend, met a yogi. You were a student and just like met a yogi, had a great conversation. They signed up to come to India. So we just never know. So as yoga teachers, it's important if we want to inspire people to come to our classes or our workshops or retreats, we've got to be in proximity with yogis. So taking classes was a good thing.
Yeah, she was just asking me about a teacher training. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, the conversation went to India from there. And she
Nice.
was coming. So that is such a beautiful alignment right there.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say though about retreats is that we've led many from Costa Rica to Mexico to Bali to Spain to India to Canada, Finland, all over. And the last retreat that we led was West Virginia. And for me, that was one of the most nourishing retreats ever. Just it had to do with I think the many factors, the team that we had, the length of time, it was very manageable, the support that we had, the activities we had. But actually, really what it was, I didn't overcommit myself. So even if I think to the summer before doing the Muskoka retreat here, which was amazing and it was a huge success, it was like very demanding for me because I was like basically from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. I was just doing a lot of facilitation. And versus in West Virginia, we had others come in and contribute, and it actually made it a very rich experience. So, I guess I'm just saying as a reminder for myself and for all of us, when we're teaching, yes, it very often is very nourishing, but we have to be mindful not to push ourselves too hard or give too much of ourselves. And I'm just learning the power of teamwork and
Mhm.
collaboration, right? We can do so much more. Like as we think about the Bhakti Yoga Conference, which we're going to do again next spring, it's without getting into details now, but we're going to do bigger and more exciting things, but through collaboration. So instead of being like so much responsibility and effort and energy on primarily myself, engaging others and it's in making that possible so that we can, I don't know. So I'm learning, but collaboration, teamwork, and doing it authentically, being true to our nature, all of these things are very important.
Yeah, they might require a balance.
Yeah. Yes. Balance. That's one thing that we work on.
Yeah, it's part of our practice.
Amazing. And so again, so back, just kind of closing the loop on the yoga for grief, that course, it's happening this week.
Yeah.
It's so if you're listening live or if you're catching the episode now, or even if you're not, you can go as a self-study, signing up for Happy Jack Yoga University. And actually, I'll wait till next week for an announcement, but we got like an announcement coming out soon of like a super accessible way to get a taste of Happy Jack Yoga. But anyways, if you wanted to do the yoga for grief, they can just sign up, get that wisdom, and just apply it. If you are a yoga teacher, it can be super helpful. If you're not a yoga teacher, it sounds like it can be very effective in just helping us navigate life. And you said something really powerful that none of us will escape this life without facing grief,
Yeah.
without navigating grief, and that's true with none of us will get out alive, and what is it, when you drive by the cemetery, my dad always says a joke, people are just dying to go there. I mean, we're all heading that way. And it's not joking matter because it's sad, but it's also reality. And we talked about this on the Sunday satsang actually, and just disclaimer before I say this word, not to shock anybody or traumatize anybody, or but I was at a seminar with Tony Robbins helping him to lead an event. And long story short, there was a teenage boy, a 14-year-old boy, who was up on stage, and he'd been struggling with mental health, and he had thoughts, and he was up on stage in front of all of us, and he was like, suicide, suicide. We can't be afraid of this word. Like, it's happening. It's happening to my friends. It's happening to teens. It's by just avoiding the word is not making it go away. So it was like, obviously the whole room was in tears, like emotionally, beautifully, because this young 14-year-old boy was just such an advocate to, like, we've got to face this stuff. And so just this idea, and I know that's like a very strong word, but just this idea of grief. I love that this is coming into yoga, right? Like, we started out as happy Jack yoga, right? It was just happy, fun, high fives, hugs. That's where we started 15 years ago. And it's grown. And now our courses are like yoga for grief, trauma informed yoga, therapeutic skills for yoga teachers, yoga for mental health. You can tell, we've had some influence from others on the team, but it's so necessary, and it's beautiful to have the balance. It doesn't mean that we don't aim to be happy and joyful and fun and playful, majority, but like you say, we don't get out alive. We don't get out without facing grief. And so we see it with this little dog on your lap right now, and he's getting quite old and slow, and eventually we're going to grieve this little guy. Hopefully it's another couple years, but it's the journey of life.
It is, and we don't want to look away from the human experience. It is part of our human experience is to, navigate the difficult things. And it would be bypassing them if we only were happy and high-fiving, then we would deny part of our humanity that is inherent in all of us. And
Yeah.
that's not what yoga is for, I don't think. Even though it's true that happiness is our birthright, but we don't get there if we don't also acknowledge what it takes to be a human being. And in fact, when we first kicked off our grief training this morning, I was like, I'm so happy to be here, and I was aware of the contrast. Like, how come a person is so lit up and so happy, like, yay, we get to talk about trauma.
Yeah.
And let's talk about grief. And I
Mm.
say this with my most humble and authentic heart. I really do find it so expansive and deepens my life experience. And I feel deeply grateful that we get to explore these topics
Mm.
from our hearts together.
I feel like if it's real, if that's for me, that's what's nourishing. That's what makes it
Yes.
so exciting to come to conversation. I know it sounds funny to come to a grief conversation. This is amazing. I'm so happy. But it's what it is that I think that gives us that feeling, is that we're being honest. We're being real, raw, authentic, vulnerable, open, and regardless of what the topic of conversation is, when we show up that way. And so it's a good reminder as yoga teachers, this is how we want to show up, at the yoga class with our students. It doesn't mean that we come in and we need to dump our deepest darkest secrets, or vent about something we're deeply grieving, but to share in an authentic way that kind of lets people into our world, without like bringing the vibe down, but just bringing it real and drawing people in, creating a safe space. And now all of a sudden they feel safe to raise their hand and to share, or to let go in their asana class, whatever it happens to be. And that's, I mean, those are the best yoga classes for sure. And back to what you said about like being a yoga teacher, in my early days there were times when it was very draining, and even at the end of the class sometimes, and that's when I wasn't showing up authentically. That's when I was trying to perform. I was trying to put everybody on my shoulders and lift the energy up or something, when that wasn't, I didn't have rapport, I didn't have sensory acuity. I was trying to fix or change the vibe, and that doesn't work, right? But when we can meet it, be present, hold space for what is, and be real, and then move through, and eventually uplift from there. But yeah, I get it. It is,
Mm,
it's very inspiring to be in these environments.
yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful insight. And great that you can see that about your own evolution as a teacher
Mm.
and as a space holder. That's very powerful.
And you know what? It's practice.
Yeah.
I love, that's why, thank you. Thank you, Evelina, Hannah, Cece, Angie, Jim, Rita, Sue, Swati. Love it, from India. We got Tammy and Tanya. Thank you guys for being here. I feel like, these are our family, our chosen family. And what I was going to say is just showing up every week for this podcast. Sometimes we have a very detailed plan, and sometimes it's kind of from the heart. I think today was very much just from the heart, and I find it's very healing and therapeutic. Like, it's like I got my session with the therapist scheduled, got the session with the coach scheduled, got my session with the team scheduled, and the podcast, like the Sunday satsang, the business of yoga, all of these different, essentially their relationships, their conversations, and they're nourishing. So thank you all for being a part of it.
Thank you for facilitating. It's
Yeah.
really amazing.
And so this is episode 141, live from Muskoka, Ontario, Canada, in person. We're doing some recording after this, so that's why we're in the same space. Otherwise, we would keep our distance by a half hour. I'm just kidding. But thank you for being here with us, and for those who are in the grief course, enjoy the rest of the week. For those who are listening later, send us an email, info@happyjackyoga.com. We'll share the details of the yoga for grief. And again, for those coming to India with us, can't wait to welcome you in Mother India. I applied for my visa last night,
Oh, wow.
got it this morning, so overnight it's done. And wishing you all an amazing rest of the day, and we'll see you very soon. Namaste.
Namaste.